You won't believe which Roosevelt dimes are worth a fortune. These three coins could be hiding in your change right now. Did you know that some Roosevelt dimes could be worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars, and most people don't even realize it? Hidden in your pocket change, drawers, or coin jars, these rare dimes carry secrets from decades ago, mistakes, rare mintings, and limited editions that make collectors go crazy. In this video, we're revealing the top 3 most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever minted, showing you exactly how to identify them, why they are so rare, and how much money they could fetch if you're lucky enough to own one. If you've ever wondered whether your old dimes could be a hidden gold mine, you absolutely cannot miss this. The story of the 1969 Roosevelt dime begins with the long legacy of the Roosevelt dime series, which first entered circulation in 1946 as a tribute to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose leadership during the Great Depression and World War II left an unforgettable mark on American history, and whose involvement in the March of Dimes campaign to fight polio made the choice of the dime denomination especially meaningful. By the time the 1960s arrived, the Roosevelt dime had already become one of the most familiar and trusted circulating coins in the United States, and the design created by John R. Sinnock had remained unchanged, carrying Roosevelt's profile on the obverse and a torch surrounded by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse representing liberty, peace, and strength. The year 1969 was an important chapter in U.S. coinage, because the decade had already brought major changes, including the 1965 removal of silver from dimes and quarters, which permanently changed the composition of the Roosevelt dime from 90% silver to a clad mix of copper and nickel. The 1969 dime therefore belongs to the early years of the new era of clad coinage, when the U.S. Mint was still adjusting to large production demands and new metallic standards. These early clad years are closely studied by collectors because small variations in quality mint mark placement and strike clarity can sometimes add interest and value. In 1969, the U.S. Mint produced Roosevelt dimes at the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint. Philadelphia coins had no mint mark. Denver coins carried a clear D mint mark, and San Francisco coins included the S mint mark, though San Francisco focused mainly on proof coinage rather than general circulation. The total mintage numbers for 1969 were high, reflecting the growing consumer economy of the late 1960s and the heavy nationwide use of dimes in vending machines, payphones, parking meters, and everyday transactions. Philadelphia struck the largest quantity, followed by Denver, while San Francisco produced a smaller number of proof coins specifically made for collectors. The physical characteristics of the 1969 dime followed the post-1965 clad formula consisting of an outer layer of copper nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its silver-colored surface, but without any actual silver content. The weight remained at 2.27 grams, with a diameter of 17.9 millimeters and a reeded edge. Even though silver was no longer present, the design details continued to reflect the ideals of President Roosevelt's leadership, with the portrait rendered in Sinnock's traditional style, showing Roosevelt facing left with strong facial features that symbolized determination and resilience during one of the most challenging eras in American history. Collectors of the 1969 Roosevelt dime look closely at strike quality because the early clad coins sometimes show weak strikes, especially around the torch and branches on the reverse. Coins from Denver often exhibit stronger strikes on average, while Philadelphia strikes from the same year can show minor softness in details, though well-preserved high-grade examples from either mint are appreciated by enthusiasts. For proof coins from San Francisco, the frosted cameo effect is particularly sought after, especially when the contrast between the mirrored fields and frosted devices is sharp and visually appealing. In terms of errors and varieties, the 1969 Roosevelt dime is known for a few collector interest pieces. Occasional off-center strikes clipped planchets die cracks, and broad strikes have been found, which are typical of the minting process during the high-volume production years of the late 1960s. One of the most intriguing aspects for collectors is searching for sharply struck full bands on the reverse torch, which indicates a high-quality strike, though the full band's designation is more commonly associated with mercury dimes. The concept still appeals to enthusiasts who enjoy comparing strike details on later dime series. Circulation patterns of the 1969 dime reflected the economic energy of the United States at the end of the decade, when inflation was beginning to rise and coin demand was constantly growing. The introduction of clad coinage had already solved the severe circulating coin shortage earlier in the decade, and by 1969, the mint was running efficiently with modernized equipment capable of producing billions of coins yearly. As a result, the 1969 dime became a common coin in daily commerce, and most Americans who lived through the era would have handled many of these coins without giving a second thought to their eventual historical significance. The long-term importance of the 1969 Roosevelt dime lies not only in its specific year of production, but in how it represents the evolution of American coinage technology, economic conditions, and public expectations. It stands at a moment when the mint had fully transitioned away from silver and was entering a technologically more advanced age of coin manufacturing. The dime itself continued to symbolize Franklin Roosevelt's leadership, humanitarian values, and the broader American spirit of unity and perseverance. Over time, as many 1969 dimes circulated heavily, they became worn, which makes uncirculated examples more attractive to modern collectors, especially those who build year-by-year Roosevelt dime sets. Proof versions from the San Francisco Mint remain popular for their craftsmanship and mirror-like surfaces, and they serve as an excellent contrast to the business strikes from Philadelphia and Denver. Today, the 1969 Roosevelt dime carries both historical and sentimental value, representing an era of change, progress, and national growth, while remaining a small but enduring piece of American everyday life. As we explore deeper into the history behind the 1969 Roosevelt dime, it becomes essential to understand the social and economic atmosphere in the United States during that period, because the environment in which a coin is minted often shapes its significance. The late 1960s were marked by political change, economic pressure, and cultural transformation. The mint had already faced coin shortages earlier in the decade, as rising silver prices encouraged the public to hoard older coins containing precious metal. This problem reached a peak around 1964 and prompted the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from the dime and the quarter. By 1969, the nation had fully adjusted to the new clad composition, and the public no longer viewed these coins as temporary replacements, but as the standard coinage of the modern era. The mint itself was undergoing improvements during these years. New high-speed presses increased the rate of production, allowing billions of coins to be struck annually. These machines handled the copper-nickel-clad layers more reliably than earlier equipment. As a result, even though minor striking issues still appeared, the overall consistency of 1969 dimes was far better than the transitional years of 1965 through 1967, when the mint suspended mint marks and faced heavy pressure to supply circulating coins. By 1969, mint marks had returned, and Denver once again stamped its D on the coins it produced, while Philadelphia coins continued without a mint mark, because the mint assumed that Philadelphia's output was recognizable by default. The Roosevelt dime design itself had already served the American public for more than 2 decades. Sculptor John R. Sinek had crafted the design quickly after Roosevelt's death in 1945 because the public and government wanted a rapid tribute to the president who had guided the nation through crisis. The story of the Roosevelt dime in 1966 begins during a transformational era in American coinage, When the United States Mint was navigating a national coin shortage, an economic shift, and a change in metal composition that dramatically affected circulating coins across the country. The year 1966 sits at the heart of the clad era, a time when the mint moved away from traditional silver coinage and into a new technological and economic direction. The Roosevelt dime, first introduced in 1946, as a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, had already become a familiar part of American life, but the 1966 issue represents a unique phase marked by experimentation, adaptation, and the pressures of public demand. To understand the significance of the 1966 Roosevelt dime, we first look back at the early to mid-1960s, when the United States was experiencing a massive shortage of coins. This shortage was caused by multiple factors, including increasing consumer spending, the popularity of vending and parking machines, and widespread hoarding of silver coins as the price of silver rose. Due to this, the mint was not able to supply enough coins for the expanding economy, and stores, banks, and businesses constantly struggled to keep smaller denominations available for everyday transactions. The government determined that the best solution would be to remove silver from circulation. Dimes and quarters beginning in 1965 would no longer be made of 90% silver and, instead, would be produced using a copper-nickel-clad composition. The year 1966 falls directly into the early stage of this new clad era. The Roosevelt dime of 1966 was struck using a modern composition consisting of an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded over a pure copper core. The new composition was designed to maintain the same size, weight, and appearance of the older silver dimes, making the transition smooth for the public while also reducing the mint's dependence on precious metals. This change in metal content was one of the largest shifts in U.S. coinage since the 19th century, and 1966 coins reflect the urgency and experimentation of the period. An important historical element of the 1966 Roosevelt dime is that it was produced during a time when mint marks were temporarily removed from American coins. Beginning in 1965 and continuing through 1967, the mint removed mint marks from all dimes, quarters, and half dollars to discourage coin collecting and hoarding, which the government believed was contributing to the coin shortage. As a result, every Roosevelt dime dated 1966 carries no mint mark, even though the majority were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, while additional coins were produced at Denver and San Francisco without identification. This makes the 1966 issue unique because it forms part of a 3-year period in which collectors cannot determine where a coin originated by looking at its design. Production of the 1966 Roosevelt dime was extremely high. The mint was under intense pressure from the Treasury and the American public to flood the economy with new coinage and stabilize circulation. Although official mint reports for the time show large mintages across denominations, the 1966 dime is notable because it marks one of the earliest full years of clad production at maximum capacity. These high mintages mean that most 1966 dimes remain common in circulation today, and they rarely command high premiums unless preserved in exceptional condition. During this time, the mint also experimented with adjustments in die preparation, striking pressure, and plancher quality in order to perfect the clad coinage process. Because of this, some 1966 dimes display slight variations in strike sharpness, rim thickness, and surface texture compared to later issues. These differences are subtle but important to specialists who study this transitional coinage era. Unlike the silver dimes of previous decades, which often exhibited attractive toning, the copper-nickel surface of the 1966 dime tended to age differently, showing more muted colors and faster wear in circulation. The absence of proof sets for 1965, 1966, and 1967 is another historical hallmark. Instead of the traditional proof coins the mint issued, special mint sets commonly known as SMS sets. These special mint set 1966 Roosevelt dimes were produced with better than circulating quality, Though they were not true proofs, they often display a satin or semi-proof-like finish. Collectors today often seek out these SMS dimes because they represent the only premium version of the coin available for that year. The highest quality SMS 1966 dimes are valued for their sharp details, clean surfaces, and strong luster. The broader historical context of the 1966 Roosevelt dime also includes national events affecting the U.S. economy and public sentiment. The mid-1960s were marked by continuing social change, the rise of new technologies, and increased consumerism. The coin shortage had become a national conversation piece, with newspapers covering stories about the disappearance of coins from everyday commerce. The release of clad dimes, including those dated 1966, symbolized the government's response to public frustration and economic strain. As the public gradually accepted the new non-silver dimes, the shortage began to ease, and circulation normalized by late 1966 and early 1967. In design, the 1966 dime continued. The original work of John R. Sinek, whose portrait of President Roosevelt had been used since 1946. The obverse shows Roosevelt in profile facing left, representing leadership and national recovery, tied to his role in the creation of the March of Dimes and his efforts to fight polio. The reverse features a torch symbolizing liberty and opportunity, flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch representing strength. This timeless design remained unchanged throughout. The transition from silver to clad composition, reinforcing a sense of continuity during a period of change. For collectors, the 1966 Roosevelt dime presents value more in historical significance than rarity. It is a coin that captures an important turning point in American numismatic history and represents the mint's evolution into modern high-volume production technology. While most circulated examples are common high-grade specimens from special mint sets and exceptional condition, circulation strikes attract interest. Today, the 1966 dime stands as a reminder of the challenges the U.S. Mint faced and the innovative steps it took to ensure a stable national coin supply. The story of the 1966 Roosevelt dime reflects the nation's economic realities, the mint's adaptation to new materials, and the enduring presence of President Roosevelt's legacy in American coinage. This coin serves not only as a piece of monetary history, but also as a marker of an era of transition, experimentation, and national change that helped shape modern U.S. currency. The story of the 1971 Roosevelt dime begins long before the coin itself was minted, because to understand the significance of the 1971 issue, we must go back to the origins of the Roosevelt dime in 1946, when the United States chose to honor President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had led the nation through both the Great Depression and World War II, and who had become a symbol of strength, perseverance, and leadership for the American people. The dime was selected for this tribute because of Roosevelt's close association with the fight against polio and the March of Dimes, a national effort that raised money for research, treatment, and support for millions of affected children. As the years passed, the Roosevelt dime became one of the most stable and unchanged coins in American circulation, retaining its familiar portrait of Roosevelt, designed by John R. Sinek, and its simple reverse, featuring a torch symbolizing liberty flanked by olive and oak branches, representing peace and strength. By the time the year 1971 arrived, the United States Mint had already undergone major changes in coinage composition, due to rising silver prices in the early 1960s. The Coinage Act of 1965 had eliminated silver from the dime and quarter and reduced it drastically in the half-dollar, marking the beginning of a new era of clad coinage. The 1971 Roosevelt dime continued this composition, using a copper core bonded between outer layers of cupronickel, giving it durability and resistance to wear, which was essential for heavy circulation in a rapidly growing economy. The early 1970s were a period of social transition. economic challenges, and ongoing political tensions in the United States, and yet coinage remained a silent witness to everyday life, reflecting the nation's ability to adapt to changing times. When analyzing the year 1971 specifically, it holds a quiet but important place in dime history because it was part of a decade where changes in minting technology, quality control, and production volumes shaped the coins Americans used daily. The Philadelphia Mint, which produced the 1971 dime, did so without a mint mark, as was tradition before the revival of the P mint mark. Decades later, millions of these coins entered circulation as part of the country's everyday financial system, but despite their common appearance, collectors have grown increasingly interested in subtle varieties, minting errors, and condition-based rarities that give the 1971 dime more character than its simple design suggests. During this period, the mint was focused on improving the efficiency of coin production due to an increasing demand for circulating coinage, driven by population growth, business expansion, and economic activity. The machinery used at the time produced strong, consistent strikes, but variations still occurred, leading to a range of minor yet intriguing collectible differences, such as off-center strikes, die cracks, weak strikes, and occasional planchet errors. Every one of these pieces tells a story about the physical process of creating currency, where thousands of tons of pressure produced tiny discs of metal that would travel through hands' pockets, registers, banks, and businesses all across America. In 1971, the dime served as more than just a 10-cent piece. It represented the stability of the American monetary system at a time when the country was about to face major economic shifts, including stagflation, rising inflation rates, and the eventual end of the Bretton Woods system. President Richard Nixon would soon announce policies that dramatically shifted the country's economic direction, and while these large political and financial decisions were unfolding, the humble dime continued its daily work unnoticed by most but essential for commerce, from buying newspapers and candy to paying transit fares or contributing to vending machines. The coin was a small but constant presence in American life. As collectors look back at the 1971 Roosevelt dime, they also consider the broader role of the series in U.S. coinage history. The Roosevelt dime had now been in circulation for 25 years and had become one of the most familiar coins to Americans. Its design had remained unchanged, a testament to its acceptance and functionality. The 1971 issue served as a mid-era example of how the series transitioned from silver to clad and how modern minting shaped the coins of the late 20th century. Although not rare in general circulation, high-grade examples are prized by collectors because copper-nickel-clad coins from this era often show heavy wear and lack the sharp details found in coins that were preserved early. Furthermore, the 1971 dime helps illustrate how the mint balanced tradition with modernization. The iconic portrait of Roosevelt continued to honor a beloved leader, while the updated metal composition reflected the economic realities of a post-silver currency world. Collectors studying the coin recognize that while it may not carry the mystique of key dates or rare varieties, it is a necessary chapter in the long-running narrative of American dimes, a coin that quietly documented the nation's evolving financial landscape. As the historical story expands deeper into the context surrounding the coin, we can reflect on the mint's internal developments during this era. The early 1970s saw improved die-making techniques, better steel alloys for striking tools, and enhanced quality checks, although perfect consistency was still impossible. These technological shifts made the 1971 Roosevelt dime part of a larger evolution in American numismatics. The coin also represents a time before major design changes swept through U.S. coinage in later decades, making it a snapshot of mid-century style and stability. In the final reflection, the 1971 Roosevelt dime stands as a reminder of how everyday objects can carry long histories and deep national meaning. A simple coin passed from person to person, carries with it the legacy of a president, the transformation of U.S. currency, the economic pressures of a shifting era, and the craftsmanship of the mint that produced it. Collectors and historians continue to examine these coins, not because they are rare, but because they are rich in context, offering insight into the nation's past and into the continuous story of American money, from silver to clad, from wartime leadership to modern economic realities, and from humble circulation pieces to objects of historical appreciation. As we explore further into the historical landscape surrounding the 1971 Roosevelt dime, it becomes clear that this small piece of currency was shaped not only by the mint that produced it, but also by the economic and cultural environment of early 1970s America. The United States was experiencing major shifts influenced by political decisions, global events, and technological advancements, and every coin minted during this time indirectly reflects those conditions. The year 1971 was especially significant because it marked the moment when the United States moved further away from the gold standard, culminating in President Richard Nixon's decision to suspend the direct convertibility of the dollar into gold. This event, known as the Nixon shock, deeply affected the international monetary system as the value of the dollar shifted to a more flexible system determined by global markets. Although the dime itself was no longer tied to precious metal, its production and usage were still affected by broader changes in the financial world. Coins like the 1971 Roosevelt dime symbolized the transition from a metal-backed currency era into a modern fiat currency system. At the same time, the mint was focused on producing enough coinage to keep up with national demand, as the American economy relied heavily on physical cash for daily transactions. Credit cards were still in their early stages, and electronic payments were decades away, which meant that coins like the dime played an important role in nearly every financial interaction. Whether people were buying postage, paying telephone booth charges, or using vending machines, the dime was essential and its reliability mattered. With millions of transactions occurring every day, the mint needed to ensure that production was efficient, consistent, and capable of supporting a nation growing in both population and consumer activity. The Philadelphia Mint, which produced the 1971 Roosevelt dime, faced the challenge of maintaining high volumes and strong quality control while adapting to new machinery and refining production processes. The technology used during this period was becoming more advanced than the equipment of the 1950s and early 1960s, but it still required expert operators, careful oversight, and constant adjustment. Many of the errors that collectors search for today, such as off-center strikes, die breaks, clipped planchets, and weak strikes, were the natural byproducts of this type of mass production. Each error, though unintentional, represents a unique moment in the minting process and adds a layer of character to the 1971 dime, making it more than just a common circulation coin.